This incident happened nearly 15 years ago, but the memory still haunts me. I was already married when I met a new colleague at work. We had a lot in common, both dealing with difficult pasts and trying to find our footing in life. We often talked during lunch breaks and sometimes met up for coffee after work. However, one day he tried to kiss me, and I decided it was best if we kept our interactions strictly professional. I told my husband about the incident, and he was understanding. I didn't mention how deeply upset my colleague had been over my rejection. After some time, we resumed having lunch together as colleagues. Both of us were trying to overcome our struggles, and it felt good to have someone who understood. But after a while, I realized it wasn't healthy for either of us. He asked me to meet up one last time, and foolishly, I agreed. We went to our usual cafe, but I noticed he was unusually quiet. Midway through dinner, he began talking about his plans for the future, about how we could have a great life together. I felt increasingly uncomfortable and asked him to take me home. It was late, and instead of driving me home, he took a detour to a remote park. The night was dark, and the place was deserted. An uneasy feeling crept over me. He parked and turned off the car. We were alone, and the atmosphere was tense. He turned to me and, with an unsettling calmness, said we belonged together. Trying not to upset him, I gently reminded him that I was married, and we were just colleagues. Given his history of unpredictable behavior, I was petrified. He became agitated, nearly in tears, proclaiming his love for me. Suddenly, he reached over and gripped my neck tightly with his arm. I was looking straight ahead when everything went black. The next thing I knew, there was a bright light and a police officer at the car window. He asked if I was all right. I was disoriented and terrified. There was vomit on my shirt, and I realized I had wet myself. He had cut off the blood flow to my brain long enough to knock me out. He had been a wrestler in high school. The officer listened as he tried to explain that I was just drunk and that everything was fine. He got a ticket, but I was too scared to contradict him. I managed to say that I was fine, but needed to go home immediately. I hoped the officer's presence would ensure my safe return. He drove me home without a word. I don't know if he had intended to kill me or if he had just lost control. Either way, it was a close call. The physical aftermath made it clear how serious the situation had been. I eventually told my husband, but only much later, and felt a lot of guilt for having met him in the first place. We saw him a few more times at work events, but he never spoke to me again. If that officer hadn't shown up, I might not be here today. I've been holding on to this story for years now and would like to finally get it off my chest. When I was around 12, about 12 years ago, my younger brother and I often visited a riverbank near our home. It was a secluded spot with a playing field, a small forest, and a serene river that we loved. We would often take our dog there, letting her roam around while we played on the riverbank or explored the woods. One weekend, we were playing near the river. The area had a field close to the water, a playground near the forest, and another playground tucked away in the wooded area. We were swinging on the swing set at the more distant playground, from which you could see the residential streets and the parking lot wrapping around the forest. As we were swinging, I noticed a pickup truck drive up one of the roads and pull into the parking lot. It was quiet, with no other cars around and just an occasional passerby walking their dog. The truck parked about 50 meters from where we were. My vision isn't the best, but I could make out some distinct clothing pieces as the people exited the truck. 3 people got out. 2 appeared to be older, in their 40s, dressed casually. 1 wore a baseball cap. The third person looked younger. perhaps in their 20s, wearing a hoodie and jeans. I assumed they were just a family coming to enjoy the river. I watched them walk away towards the forest, completely opposite from where we were. We had our dog with us, and after a while, we decided to take her for a walk through the forest trails. About 15-20 minutes had passed since the truck had arrived. We strolled through the woods, reaching a corner of the property bordered by a wooden fence. Beyond the fence was a residential road, and to our right, another fence separated the forest from the backyards of the nearby houses. Tall trees provided additional privacy, making it hard for anyone to see into the forest. My brother and I were at that age where playing pretend didn't feel as genuine as it once did. Feeling bored but not ready to go home, I picked up a stick and suggested to my brother that we play a game of sword fighting. I handed him a stick, and we started to duel playfully. As I moved around, I noticed our dog's behavior change. She was ignoring our game and me, moving slowly, ears back and nose pointed as if she sensed something. Following her movements, I looked up and saw the 3 people from the truck standing just 3 meters in front of us. They were not a family, but 3 grown men. The man closest to us had short gray hair and a stubbly beard. The other was gaunt with shoulder-length, greasy hair. They had silently approached us and quickly turned their backs, pretending to look at something in the trees. The silence was unsettling. I realized we needed to leave immediately. I grabbed my dog's collar, hooking her up to the leash while turning my attention back to my brother. He was still oblivious to the 3 men right behind us, still trying to duel me with his stick. I told him repeatedly that we needed to go, but he remained wrapped up in the game. Finally, he noticed the men, and we both started moving. Fortunately, there was a path leading out of the forest a few meters ahead, and we managed to put some distance and obstacles between us and the men. However, my brother wanted to stop and keep playing, which frustrated me. I frantically urged him to keep moving. I never looked back at the men, my vision focused solely on reaching the safety of the open roads, sidewalks, and homes ahead. We made it home without incident, to my knowledge. I wondered if the men had followed us on foot, returned to their truck, or simply given up. At that moment, I didn't care. I just wanted to be home, which was only a few blocks away. Once home, I broke down and told my mom what had happened. Her reaction was somewhat dismissive, thinking I was overreacting due to my anxious nature. Still feeling unsafe with her response, I retreated to my room to cry alone. Recounting the story with my mom years later, she mentioned that she had called the police, but nothing ever came of it. I am incredibly grateful to my dog, who likely saved our lives that day. Since that incident, I have become highly skilled at reading people's body language. I can tell when someone is lying and can read emotions and intentions like a book. I can sense when someone's vibe is off from a good distance away. This ability has been both a blessing and a curse. To the 3 creeps, I hope you rot for what you did. This incident happened back when I still lived with my parents. I was commuting to university at the time and had 2 siblings, my sister and my brother, both younger than me. Our house was in a quiet neighborhood located at the very end of the street. During the week, my dad usually left for work early in the morning, around 3 a.m., so I often felt it was my duty to be the man of the house while he was gone. However, since it was the weekend, my dad was home. One night, I was abruptly woken up by my sister's frantic voice calling my name. We had separate rooms on the 2nd floor, and stepping out of our rooms, we could look down over the banister to see the front door. Still groggy, I glanced at the clock. It was around 2:45 a.m. My sister told me there were 2 men at our front door, and that immediately jolted me awake. We quietly crept out of my room and looked down at the front door. There was no one visible at the door, but I noticed my parents standing off to the side, out of view from the glass panels. I whispered down to my dad, and he confirmed that 2 men had been knocking and talking loudly. Hearing this from my dad intensified my fear. I quickly went back to my room, grabbed my baseball bat, and cautiously made my way downstairs, ensuring I wasn't seen from the door. My brother was right behind me as we joined our parents, whispering to gather more details. My parents had been awakened by our dog barking and discovered the men at the door. Despite no one answering, the men had returned and continued knocking, seemingly undeterred by the barking dog. Their persistence, given the late hour and our secluded street, made the situation even more unnerving. After a few tense minutes, the men walked away from the door. We moved to the living room to peek out the windows, which overlooked the driveway illuminated by our outdoor lights. We saw a dark SUV parked there, but it appeared empty. I asked my father, where had the men gone? Our answer came quickly when the handles on our back sliding doors began to rattle. They were trying to break in through the kitchen. My mom's panicked voice broke the silence, calling out to my dad. I gripped the bat tighter, mentally preparing for the worst, and my dad grabbed his phone to calmly report the situation to the police. After a minute that felt like an eternity, the rattling stopped, and the men disappeared from the back door, only to return to knocking at the front again. By this time, several minutes had passed. Suddenly, we saw police cars speed up the street, lights flashing. As they pulled into our driveway, the men bolted, trying to flee around the side of the house. One managed to escape our view, but the other was intercepted by an officer who quickly subdued him with a taser. While some officers pursued the second man around the house, one approached my dad and me as we stepped outside. They eventually found the other man hiding in our neighbor's garden shed. Both men appeared to be intoxicated or on drugs, as the one hiding had substances on him. They were arrested that night, but we never learned what charges they faced or what happened to them afterward. The entire ordeal was terrifying and surreal. I just hope they got what they deserved.